So behind the scenes and everything you can see when, you've raised at really good valuations and you've made this amazing hire, there is a human being. And, no matter what, it's a lot for one human being to go through.
What's up, everyone? This is Justin Kahn. Welcome to my podcast, The Quest, where I dive into the ups and downs of trailblazers around me to help you figure out life and where you want to be. Before we start, bang that subscribe button for unfiltered conversations on tech, wellness, and entertainment dropping every Tuesday. Joining me today is my friend Mathilde Collin. She's the co-founder and CEO of Front App, where her mission is to help people everywhere find meaning and happiness with their work. I met Mathilde when she was going through Y-Combinator back in 2014. And since then, she's raised over $138 million in venture capital. In our conversation, we discussed the importance of viewing founders and CEOs as people, as well as showing vulnerability as a leader. And we also explored her mission to increase well-being, a sense of belonging, and transparency in the workplace. Here's my conversation with Mathilde. Hope you enjoy. Mathilde, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. You're somebody I really wanted to get from the beginning, because I think I texted you about it in the summer but you were having a kid. So
exactly. I think you caught me, but I was also, when I was thinking, I was off for my maternity leave. I was off for about 4 months. And I was thinking about what I was looking forward to. And I was looking forward to, talking with people that I think have amazing perspective on life and on work. And you're one of them. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. So we always start off with telling the guest story and their origin story, where they came from. You and I met 7 years ago when you were applying to Y Combinator. And that's a really fun story, but I want to hear, how did you become in the position where, you had started a company and were trying to bring it to Silicon Valley?
So I graduated from school. I had to borrow money to go to school. And so I studied entrepreneurship. I knew I wanted to start a company, but financially it was too hard for me to start a company right after I graduated. So I took a job in a startup because I loved, the fast pace of startups. I was doing mostly sales, because I figured I could make money and then, build a company faster. But anyways, what happened was just a year after I started this company, I met Laurent, my co-founder, and I also met the guy who would be our first investor. And so I got the opportunity to start this company because of the fact that I met an amazing co-founder and I had the financial freedom to do it. So the origin of Front is I've been passionate about people's happiness at work since I was very young, because I was raised in a family where I felt like too many people really disliked their jobs. And I was a happy kid. I didn't want to grow up and not enjoy what I would be doing. And so I thought, one, I want to create a place where people will be happy to come to work every day. And two, I want to work on software that would have a meaningful impact on the day-to-day job of people. So, email was an easy start, because that's really how a lot of knowledge worker gets work done. So I started this company a year after I graduated, and I applied to YC before the product was even launched. And then I went into the interview. YC loved us, but we had a weird cap table. And so they sent Justin to tell us, you need to change your cap table or you can't join YC. And that's how I met you. And it was a very intense conversation from day one.
Yeah, I remember Kevin Hale, he was the founder of Wufoo, which is kind of like Typeform before Typeform. And he's a designer, just like a brilliant designer. And he was raving about your product. I guess it wasn't even launched, like you said, but it was the mock-ups, I think, that you showed him. And after the Y Combinator interviews, we always would do like a debrief, right? So everyone's in the room, all the partners are in the room, and Kevin's like, this product is like really amazing. I really want to fund Mathilde. And the only problem is she doesn't own like any of the company. I think you own 20% of the company or something like that at the time, you and your co-founder, and maybe the initial investors, early investors owned 80%, or maybe it was like 66%.
3366 or 50-50. I can't remember, but
Yeah.
I remember you said flip that and they need to own 20 and you should own 80. And I was like, oh, challenge accepted.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So
it worked.
I called you and I was like, you have to, you got to go tell your investors to take 20% of the company. Otherwise, we don't think it's viable, because in Silicon Valley, people won't fund a business if the founders aren't incentivized and don't own enough. And that's the prevailing standard here. Right. And so I actually did not think it was going to work. I told you that. And I was just, and I, they made me be the bearer of bad news because had just joined. So apparently they had some rule. It was like hazing. They were like, whoever you're new, so you have to like have these tough conversations with the founders. And so they made me call, because I hadn't even done your interview. So I called you and I was telling you this. And then I think somehow I ended up on the phone with your investors. I don't know if you remember that. And they were in Europe. So it was at midnight, I think. And I was like kind of telling them that. And I was just like, it was hard for me to get it out there. I was like, I'm telling these people to like reduce their equity stake in your company by like 50% or something like that. And,
Yeah.
you like, they're kind of like, well, why should we do that? And I'm just like, well, we're just not going to fund it. And we don't think it can get funded by like really quality investors downstream if you don't do this. And so then they were basically like, no. And I was like, well, that's done. At least I got off the phone with them and I'm like in one piece. And then the next week, I guess, you came back and you said like, okay, I convinced them to do it.
Yeah. Well, now you understand. Like, I think the reason why we were not in a strong position is I really wanted to start this company and I had to get money. And when you raise money so early, like not necessarily in good conditions, but that was definitely a mistake. But anyways, they were in Belgium. And so I took a train with Laurent. I had no idea if I would manage to convince them. But we sat in a room for an entire day. And at the end of it, they agreed. I'm super grateful. And then since then, I've been working really hard to make sure that it's great ROI for them. And I think it is.
I think it's going to be good ROI for them. See, what I told them came true. It's like,
yeah, exactly. And I told them the same thing. I believe that, when you're surrounded by really good people, investors, employees, like everyone, I think the value of your company increases so dramatically that it's worth doing it.
Awesome. And so tell me about you. Then you came you came to YC, you came to the US. Like, what was that experience like coming, from being a French founder and being in France and also being super young?
Well, so you have to imagine that I had never traveled outside Europe when I came here for the first time to my interview. And so I think everything was new. I clearly didn't start this company thinking that I would move to San Francisco. It was already a big move for me to start a company. And so I came here, and I think that the thing that struck me the most, and ultimately the reason why I decided to stay here, and I'm still here. I'm in San Francisco right now, and that's where I live, is because of the pace at which things were going. So I really felt like you could hire people fast, you could convince someone to use your product fast, you could get introed to pretty much whoever, because you're always like one or two introductions away. So my experience coming here for the first time was, well, I'm super ambitious. I want this company to have the biggest impact it can have. And I think being here will allow me to do that. And that's why YC was a good way for me to be here. And that's then why I stayed here.
And tell me about the process of being a founder in Silicon Valley. Like, I think a lot of people from the outside think like, okay, you get into YC and then it's like you get funded and it's a straight shot to the top from there. But like, I know you went through a lot of challenges building this company. So like, tell me about some of those difficult times. Cause like now people read the headlines, right? And they'll say like raised money out of, I don't even know what your current valuation is, but you have amazing investors. You raised a lot of money. You have like a lot of team members. And it probably looks easy now from the outside, but it wasn't always like that. If it's probably not easy now, but it definitely wasn't back then. So tell me about how it went.
Yeah. Well, and I think the moment I realized this the most is when sometimes I go back to France in a pre-COVID world and I'm invited to these conferences, and that's always been the case, at least in the past 5 years. And, I'm invited because I'm this super successful CEO. And then I'm like, in my head, I'm like, oh my God, there is so much I still need to figure out. And so I think the difference between what people perceive and what you actually go through is pretty insane. But I think it's always been the case. So I'll tell you a few things that were, either good stories to illustrate this, or things that I can share that could help people. So one story about just how you feel as an entrepreneur is so you said that Kevin Hill at YC really believed in our product, and that's great. And so I met him when I had joined YC, and he told me, oh, you're the founder of Front. I mean, probably the company I'm the most excited about in this batch. And in my head, I was sure he was talking about another company. So that's how confident I was in what I was doing. And I think there is, always this perception that, like, if you're the CEO of, Stripe and Airbnb and, all these companies, you must feel really good because things are going really well. But the reality is, then you ask these people how they feel when they wake up. And the reality is, all of us feel the same way, which is one day we wake up and we feel good. And the second day we have this existential crisis. And so I think you're entirely right. There's definitely been moments in my journey where, things have been so hard that I didn't know if I could even be the CEO of Front. I've talked a little bit about this, but I worked really hard in the first 3 years of the company. And I think I worked too hard. And something happened where my co-founder was diagnosed with cancer. And so on top of working hard, I also took care of him. And so I think the fact that I was at my limit already and something was added to it, which was pretty significant, made me become crazy. Like, I woke up one day and I had just moved to this new apartment, which I think added a level of stress to this already stressful life. And I was like, I can't go to work. Like, literally, I was supposed to do my presentation to new hires, describing what Front is, why it exists. And I was like, I cannot. So instead, I called a friend, and she told me, you should go see a doctor, because if you can't even wake up and stand up and go to work, there is probably an issue. So anyways, that was the worst thing that had happened to me at the time. And I think it's clearly linked with the fact that I didn't take care of myself so much. And so behind the scenes and everything you can see when you've raised at really good valuations and you've made this amazing hire, there is a human being. And no matter what, it's a lot for one human being to go through what we're going through.
Yeah, that totally resonates with me. I've been in that position where I just didn't want to get out of bed because I was like, I'm dreading the day that I have ahead of me and like having to work on something that was tough. And I hit this rock bottom moment before I joined YC, one of my companies in 2013. And I remember that catalyzed me to see a therapist, which was very good for me at the time. I was just like, I'd resisted seeing a therapist for years and years and years. And finally I was just like, I have no choice, like, cause I can't get out of bed. And so I'm curious, like, how did that experience catalyze change for you?
Well, I feel like for it happened, I'll tell you all about what I did at that point. But I felt like for the next year and a half, when I was thinking about that episode, I was like, if I could redo my life, I would not have this experience because it was so painful. And then I think after a year and a half, roughly, I started saying, well, I'm so happy this happened to me. One, because I can have empathy when people are going through these things. And I do believe that it's a gift. And two, because I'm happier now than I used to be. And I had to hit rock bottom in order to make these changes. And so these changes were seeing a therapist, or like many therapists, just to make sure that at least one would work for me, doing hypnosis, meditating every day, exercising, changing how I eat, having a healthier relationship with my phone and my computer, like so many things, because at that point, I think so many people told me that it's not one thing that will help you feel better. It's just many things, and they will compound. And so today, most of the things that I just told you, I'm still doing them. And today, many times a week, I have these moments where, and then maybe I will sound crazy, but you'll sound, I have these moments where I'm just, looking outside and looking at a flower or a tree and thinking, well, this is like so beautiful, and just really being in the moment. And I think that's the key to happiness, which is truly being able to live in the moment. But I only managed to do this because of the fact that I had this really painful experience. But now I feel like it's something that I can try to teach my 6-month-old
Oh
daughter.
man, there's so much stuff I want to ask in there. Like I told that really resonates with me because similarly, I had to have this rock bottom experience with my company Atrium before I started really investing in my own wellness. And in retrospect, even though it was tough, I'm grateful for that experience because it has changed my life in such a positive way. Like how I wanted to ask you, hypnosis was something that was on my list of things to ask you. And I wanted to ask you, like, what are the things we've talked about it a little bit before, but like, what are the things that you've used hypnosis to help you with?
So just so you know some context, my mom, she decided to quit her job right when I started Front, I think. And she started being trained on hypnosis, and that's how I became more familiar with it. And so she introduced me to a friend of hers, and I did it. So the first time I did hypnosis was because I had a trauma. I don't know if anyone knows about this. I mean, of course, my husband knows, but I had a phobia, which like I was so scared of throwing up. Like it's absolutely irrational, but I would go somewhere and I would be scared. And anyways, it was pretty annoying, and so I decided to do hypnosis for this. And I don't know, I think I'm a rational, slightly skeptical person. And so the person was um, talking to me, and, he was telling me, and it was all over Skype, by the way. It was not in person. Uh, it was telling me your hand will go up, and I was like, poor guy, like this will never work. Like it's gonna impact his self-confidence. Like I know for a fact because I'm fully conscious. So that was the mindset I was in. I was like, I'm gonna try, but I'm very, very skeptical of it, even if my mom quit her job to do this. And it worked, and it was fascinating because I was fully aware, so I can tell you everything that happened during this moment. But uh, it would tell me your body is going to do things, and maybe it wouldn't do it all the time, but 80% of the time it would do it. Later on, I would meet this person in Paris. It was face to face. And I think the craziest thing was I was standing and he was telling me, you'll fall. And I fell. And anyways, of course, my brain would think, you don't want to fall because what if you get hurt? But so then I learned that I was receptive to hypnosis. And so I started working on different things. So when I was anxious, years ago, I worked on it. It helped me. But I think one thing that I can share is in March 2020, so a year ago, I was 3 months pregnant. It was the very beginning of COVID. We were reading all these things. And one specific morning, I received an email from one of my investors who transferred an email from a doctor well known. And the email says like half of the population is going to get COVID and it's going to last for years. And I don't know why, like I read this email and I felt such deep anxiety. And at the same time, I was pregnant. So I felt bad about being anxious, because then when I'm anxious, I'm not hungry. And I'm not sleeping well. And now it was not just impacting me, but also our baby. And anyways, I was so lucky that I had discovered hypnosis before, because the first thing I did was I called him, and then I told him I need to do something. Can you talk to me tomorrow? And the day after, we did something, and I felt great.
Amazing. That's incredible. So
I love it.
Would you recommend hypnosis? I've been meaning ever since you told me about it. I've been meaning to try it, but I would you recommend it to anybody and everybody?
Oh, absolutely anybody and everybody. It's amazing. And I think the only thing is it's not guaranteed that it's going to work on everyone. Like what he told me is he thinks I'm a pretty creative person, and the more creative you are, the more likely it is to succeed, because you can really imagine a lot of the things that are going on with your mind. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not true. That should not prevent anyone from not trying, because in my opinion, unlike therapy where you want to work on something and it might take years or an entire life uh, to change, and it's good, you should do it because you don't work on the same things. But with hypnosis, what I find amazing is in just one session you can feel drastically different.
Awesome. And okay, tell me about using your phone and like what you've done around your phone, because that's something I haven't covered very much on the podcast, but was really important to me for a while.
Well, I think that you tweeted. I'm pretty sure the story
Yeah.
of this is you tweeted. I deleted pretty much all my apps and turned my phone into grayscale, and I've been happier. And so I thought, well, this is in the middle of me not feeling well and trying to have a healthier relationship with technology. And so I just thought I'm going to do the same. And so I deleted pretty much every app, but specifically all my work applications, and um, loved it.
Yeah.
Loved everything about it except for the grayscale. Like, I take a lot of pictures and that was annoying, so I removed it, because if you don't have any apps, like, it doesn't matter if you see colors or not. So didn't like that part, but loved it. So then what I did was, all right, so seeing is believing. Like, clearly I was scared before doing it, then I did it, and then it was amazing. So I really want people to try this and just see if that's going to impact their life. And so I came back to front and I said, I'm going to do this. I've been doing it. Are some people interested in doing it with me? And maybe a group of 10 people said yes. So I remember we had a drink after work and we discussed, if we liked it or didn't like it. It was really positive. And so then at a company level, I said, well, if you use your phone less than X hours a week, you'll get an additional $100 a month for wellness benefits. So I loved it, but also I try to evangelize it as much as I could, because I think it's super important. I would say that it's even more important nowadays, like with everyone working from home, and it's even more difficult to disconnect because you don't have the physical disconnect. So I think making sure that at least your phone is not the thing that brings you back to work is critical.
Yeah, it's such an important part of being able to be present, right? Like we have a machine that we've created to take us out of being present by bringing,
Yep.
in the whole outside world. And it's been engineered by the best and brightest minds in the world to be as addictive as possible. And,
Yep.
we're kind of defenseless. The whole grayscale thing, for people who don't know, is basically, like your phone is super colorful. It's very engaging in that way. And so the idea of putting it into black and white mode, which is an accessibility feature on the iPhone, is to make it less addictive and less engaging. And it's interesting. I was able to keep this up all through about maybe 6 months ago. So it was a couple of years that I deleted all my social apps, deleted all my email. Basically, my phone was just, even deleted the web browser. It was just like for Uber and, music. It was just, it was kind of a utility. But what got me back was I started making content on, TikTok and YouTube and Twitter again. And so then I was like, I needed the apps to make the content. So now I have
You're
them.
back.
I'm back. But the one thing that's really helped, which maybe is a good segue, is I think I'm less drawn into it than I used to be, and it's less has less hold on me, and I think that's because of my meditation practice. So I found that I'm a little bit more present, even with the phone around.
Yeah, well, we can talk about it in 6 months. I've also had moments where I would reinstall an app, and like I almost think that these are two different things, meaning you can't be too much in the present moment, probably. And so, yes, I can, like, I have this muscle now that allows me to live the moment, but I think that my phone is still addictive when I have things to do on it. So I personally need that discipline in order to be fully present. I'm doing something, maybe it's something that other people in relationships will enjoy. One thing that I've been struggling with is it's good that you do it, but other people might not do it around you. And so sometimes you wish everyone was doing this because you would have more interactions. So the solution we found with my husband is that at any point in time, we can say, it's a moment where it's just the two of us. So we could literally be on our phones or whatever, but then if one of us say this, the other person has to put their phone away and just be with the other person, and it's worked well for us. So
Nice. I love that tip. I love that tip. The other thing that came up for me was like, it was pretty intimidating, right? Yeah, I think you mentioned this
yeah.
at first, to like put your phone away and to like delete your work apps off your phone. I was like, oh, I don't know if I'll be able to do that and still be a high performing individual. Did you find that was the case?
So I think a lot of people talk about this, and I don't think I felt that way. Meaning, so I think there are two different things. There is one, believing that you will not be able to do work because of the fact that you don't have your work apps. And I never believed that because I have my phone and you can text me or call me if there is something. And also at that time, we were mostly in the office. So you can come to me, I'm here and I have my phone, then you can call me. So I think there is this part where, yes, you can feel like if something bad is happening, you might not catch it but I've never believed this. And then I think there is something that's way harder to fight, which is you actually want to have access to this information because it gives you either a feeling of being important or a feeling of belonging, or you're very ambitious and you want to be involved. And that's I find the second thing way harder to fight than the first one, because the first one, it's very easy for me to convince you that there are many ways someone could reach you, even if you're not checking your Slack app, for example, every 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's a really good insight. It's like people want the information and they want to be like, it's addictive for a reason, right? Like there's a
Yes.
really good feeling that comes from being in the know or being connected
Yeah.
digitally. Okay, so switching gears, one thing that you say often that I love is that being the CEO or being a founder is just a job. And I think that it took me decades, like 15 years plus, to realize that. And so many founders and really people who are high performers in every industry, whether they're athletes or entertainers or whatever, that's like their identity. And things go in their job is how things are going in their life. So
Yeah.
like, can you talk a little bit about how you came to that realization?
I think I came to that realization in a very hard way, which was when my co-founder started being sick. I was convinced that he was sick because he worked too hard. And whether it's true or not, you don't know all the reasons why people get cancer. And then I was like, all right, well, we've worked super hard. I think company has great momentum, love everything about it, and I might lose my co-founder, which makes makes no sense. Like, this job, I don't want to do this job anymore. That's the case. And is very healthy now. So for
My
everyone
God.
listening, you can be happy about this. But I think that's probably the moment when I realized that, there are things that are more important than your job. And the things is, first of all, being healthy. Um, But I think the prime is you can have this realization. It's just like the same way, like when you're sick, you realize how great it is when you're healthy, but then you're healthy and you stop thinking about how great it is to be healthy. And so I think the you, my mind does this. So I, I don't know how I kept believing in this. Like I'd say probably that the fact that I kept meditating every day is the thing that allowed me to put a distance between what I was experiencing every day uh, and my level of happiness. So, like, of course, I still care as much, if not more, about France than I used to a few years ago. But I think the big difference is that when there is a problem, and spoiler, it happens every single day, there is a problem. And instead of, saying, I'm so miserable, like, it's in my head, I can't enjoy the thing I'm doing because I'm just thinking about it. I think the muscle I train by meditating every day is, all right, well, this is one problem. And I have a wonderful job because every day or every week, every quarter, every year, I get to solve problems that have not been solved before. And so instead of thinking, all right, my identity is tied to this company, I think about it as, in the grand scheme of things, I have nothing to lose. Like, I've been given this opportunity to work on a company. Like, the truth is, if the worst case scenario was happening, which is the company just fails tomorrow, we have like everyone stops working at front for whatever reason, it's okay. Like, we're all talented people. We'll, have great jobs, and of course it's going to be sad. But my identity is not tied to it, and it's like, I don't know why you're asking me this question. I'm trying to reflect as I'm giving an answer, and I don't know if it's meditation that's helped me train this muscle, or I think maybe one other thing that helped me is I feel like I have an incredible partner that really supported me along the way and gave me a ton of confidence. And I think like being surrounded by people who can tell you why you're a great person independently from the job that you have or whatever, I think really helps you. And this confidence really helps you not be attached to things that could disappear. And so I think that helped as well. Yeah, I don't know, these
I
are
love
two
that.
ideas I have.
No, I love that. I love both of those. That having surrounding yourself with people who love you for you
Yeah,
is critical. And then I love the part about meditation because that was my own experience too. Is that meditation was the most important skill that I ever developed in my entire life because of that ability to create that distance or that separation between what was happening and like myself, right? Like what's
yeah.
happening in the outside world and like how I perceive of or view myself, and just being able to sit in a state of awareness or presence and observe the things that are happening without, as a dispassionate observer instead of as somebody who's like being swept along by them.
Yeah, totally. And it's super hard, and this is why daily meditation is critical. At least for me, it's been because what you say seems amazing, but in order to truly live this way,
Yes.
it takes a full life.
It takes practice, right? The difference between the conceptual like idea of it and then the actual feeling that way is, can be like super huge. When people first, I mean, people probably listen to me or you talking about this and they're like, that seems impossible or whatever. Or maybe
Yeah,
they get the idea and they're like, oh yeah, I'm like different from my job. And you understand it at this like intellectual level,
yeah.
but then like really internalizing and feeling that way, that's the hard part that requires practice.
True. But what I would tell these people that are listening and thinking that is, like, I think that's maybe the misconception about meditation, which is you meditate and all of a sudden, just after having meditated, you're in this new mindset and you feel good. Like, at least that's not how I've experienced meditation. Like, first few weeks of meditating, I did it with my husband. It was like, useless. And I was feeling the same way. It's like, A, it's boring. Like, I'm not thinking about any, I have so many things I want to do. Two, I can't see any impact. Like, it's just boring. But I had been told that you need to stick to it because, in the same way that if you've never exercised in your life and we ask you to run, it's going to be a disaster and you're going to hate everything about it. I think it's the same thing. In order to see any effect on you, your body, etc., you have to practice. Meditation is exactly the same. So for people listening who are highly skeptical, don't go meditate tomorrow and think, if I'm not seeing my thoughts in front of me, then probably meditation is not for me, and it takes a ton of practice.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Even now, today, I've meditated every day for the last 2 years. And I asked my teacher, I'm like, is this working? I'm like, kind of like, is it, I do a form of Vipassana meditation. And I ask him like, I don't know if things are different. It doesn't feel like I'm making progress. And he's like, well, here's like a situation that you were in like a year ago, and kind of how I saw you, feel about it. And then maybe you've been in a similar situation now, and like maybe you're able to treat it with a different way. And like kind of in these very long time scales, like years long, for me, I'm
Yeah,
able to see progress, but not even like every day. It's like not a linear path. Like every day there's
yeah,
sometimes I get triggered and swept along, and it's like, oh, did I learn anything? Have I been, is this all worthless?
yeah, for sure. I'm the same. And even once you've mastered it, it doesn't mean that it's something you can use your entire life. You need to keep practicing.
Yeah. So one thing I love about you and your story with Front is how much commitment you have to well-being and wellness at work, which you mentioned came from an early age and watching your family want that in their work. So like, how are the ways that you've tried to implement that within your company?
So I think there are things we've done pre-COVID and things we've done post-COVID, and I can talk about both because I do believe that well-being at work is slightly different in today's world. But pre-COVID, things that we've done. So one, there are things that are almost independent from well-being, which is what I believe contributes to people being happy and engaged within their work. And so, for example, I care a lot about transparency, not because transparency is good or bad in itself, but just because, in my opinion, it's a mean to have people feel part of the journey. And whatever you do, if you know why you're doing what you're doing, I think transparency around, how the company is doing, what your customers think, like, dislike, etc., is going to provide a level of engagement that cannot be matched by any other tool in my experience. So we can talk more about this, but there are many things that we do at Front that we used to do that we still do to foster more transparency. Like our calendar are public. We all have access to, of course, we use Front, so customer communication is accessible by everyone. We have all hands and we share all the metrics. I share all the board decks, even today, etc. So that, I think, is people, when you're that transparent, I think people feel trusted, and I think this trust contributes to people's well-being. And I just don't want to answer this question just by saying these are the wellness benefits that we have, just because I do believe that feeling good at work is a pretty big thing that cannot be put in just one box. So
It's not just a yoga benefit.
yeah, exactly. Well, and it's good if you have that. We have weekly meditation at Front, but it's just that I've had to think, and I still think a lot deeply about what contributes to people's engagement at work, and I think that feeling part of the journey is one of them. I think feeling trusted is one of them. I think investing in really good managers is huge, because yes, when we were 20 people, I could be, obsessing over it, and that would be impactful. But as you scale, like, not going to work. I think that having a feeling of belonging, however you implement it, is super important. So from the tools you have to the recognition that you do, etc., I think is important. So, and then there is the wellness piece, which I can talk about. I've talked about some things that we've done, like the screen time challenge, where what we did was, if you spend less than X hours, send a screenshot of your phone and you'll get more benefits. That's one thing that we did. Another thing that we did was just leading by example. It's so stupid, but it seems so simple. But the fact that I'm taking PTO, I was on mat leave, and I was truly on mat leave, I didn't have access to my inbox for the entire time, is ultimately what will lead to other people having these healthy habits with their work. And so I don't when I told you I was anxious March last year with COVID, being pregnant, 2 days after or 1 day after, I was doing a company all hands, and I said it. And the fact that I can be vulnerable in front of them and tell them will make it way easier for other people to tell their managers or their peers that they're not doing well. So I think there is something pretty important about vulnerability, especially from leaders and leading by example. And then there are all the things that you can implement. So when COVID hit, one thing we realized, which I think every company realized, is people are not going on PTO anymore. And I'm French. I'm used to having many weeks of PTO every year, and so I was. But the truth is, what do you want to do? You're on PTO and you're stuck inside your house, and not only it's COVID, but also the wildfires are there, and so it's horrible. And so we started implementing these wellness days, like it's always Friday, and it's off for everyone in the company. So at least, like, even if you're working, no one else is working. So it forces you to not work. And we've had so many feedback from employees saying it's the best thing that happened during COVID. So what leads to happy employees is going to evolve over time as the company is growing, as the world is changing. But at least keeping launching like things, they can seem small. Like, if I had answered your question by saying we have wellness days, well, it's just one thing out of so many that we do. But just being top of mind for you and many leaders, and making sure that you iterate and then sharing to the world the thing that work, I think is going to move the company in the right direction.
I love that answer because you put so much thought into it. It's not just the yoga or wellness days or meditation or anything else like that. How did you become so comfortable being vulnerable to your company? So I think that's a big, it's a heavy lift for a lot of people.
Yeah. So it's funny because I'll share with you one example. I was doing a all hands yesterday because it's Monday. And sometimes we have questions that are asked, and so I answer them. And the question was, are you worried about new competition? And so I answered it. And then I said something that I didn't mean to say. And so I'm doing this. It's called Mathilde's Musings. Doing this, and I'm saying, and we just keep hiring better and better people. And I didn't mean to say this. I think I wanted to say the team is getting better and better, but I just didn't say this. And so then I'm talking about competition. In the back of my mind, I'm like, I should say something about it because all our early employees, which I love, are going to feel shitty. And so then at the end, I said, just I realized I said the thing and I just messed up. Honestly, I have no good reason that I have said this. And it seems like a small thing, but it actually took some courage to say that I just said something that made no sense. And I'm sorry, and I have no good reason. But then what it does is, like, I know that it's hard for me to do it, but I know that it's beneficial. Like, I know it's net positive. Like, people will see me as a human being. I do mistakes. I admit my mistakes, and then other people can do the same. And so the way I would answer your question is, I think you have to do it once to understand the impact that it has. And that is what will give you the confidence to be more and more vulnerable. Because, again, like, I'm doing it because I think it's better for me, because I don't want to play any role. Like, I want people to know who I am, not, any role I'm playing. But I also know that people will find it better that I'm that way. Like, I don't know what impact it's going to have, but I think they will trust me more. They will, in a sense, have more empathy, and like, it's just better to do it.
Yeah. They'll feel more
So,
connected and close to you, right? Like this,
yes.
we often have this mental model that if we're vulnerable, then we'll appear weak or we're scared of it because we think something bad will happen. And then you have to
Yeah.
test once you test that assumption, for the most part, you find out that that's like not the case, and something good will come out of it, or you'll be more connected and close to the people that you disclose with.
Yeah, exactly. And two things I want to say on this topic is one thing that I've done that has really, I think, helped a lot of people is telling them, like, when they complain or whatever, telling them, like, go give this feedback, go share how you feel, like, and most of the time they will do it because I've asked them to do it, and they will say, no, 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 I don't want to do it, I'm too scared, blah, 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 and then they will do it, and then it unlocks something. So, like, I truly believe that the first time is the hardest time, and so anything that you can do to push people to be vulnerable, like you're doing on this show, for example, but that you can do, every day, I think it's amazing. And number two is, I also think that you can do it, one thing that we've started doing at Front, which I think has brought a new level of empathy, is, of course, me being that way and employees being that way, but customers being that way as well. We just had yesterday, like, one of our customers who was talking during our all hands and, like, showing us how painful something that she was doing with the product was horrible. And then you have a new level of empathy, and then people will enjoy working on what they're working on even more because they will actually understand the human being behind the screen. So it's just it's a great tool that makes people happier.
Amazing. What's some advice that no one gave you when you were starting out that you wish you would give, young people who are kind of finding their place in their careers or maybe starting their startups now?
It's a tough question.
The big-
Um, I think, like, the answer I would give is, I don't know if, like, I might cheat because maybe some people told me this, but not to the extent I wanted them to tell me, which is, no matter how successful your company is going to be, it's going to be insanely hard. I and I think that the moment I heard it from people that I considered being super successful, then I realized, okay, if it's hard for them, I don't even need to ask myself, uh, is it normal that it's not just pure, like, joy, like, every single minute of my day, like, it's so then you stop asking yourself this question, and you know that it's not an existential crisis to your company. And so then you can focus on, all right, what makes me happy? How can I do these things? Because I want to be a happy human being working every day. But in the back of your mind, you don't have, well, it's hard. Should it be hard? Blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. I just feel like I had heard it. But I think there is a big difference between, saying it's hard and you feel like you have an existential crisis every day, or it's hard because there are things you're doing that are hard, and one is very easy to fix, the other one is impossible to fix. So just get rid of this one. You'll see it soon enough if your company is not viable. And then that way you can focus on what, as an individual, makes you really happy working on every day,
I love
which is
that.
a whole new topic that we've already talked about, finding your zone of genius, but we don't need to talk about it.
Do you think that, well, one question there is like, you knew you wanted to work on helping people be well and happy at work and start a company around that. Do you think you always had the thing, like we're always doing the things that you actually enjoy doing every day? Or did you have to find that over time?
No, clearly not. I mean, but the truth is, I don't even know if that will ever happen because I will evolve as a human being. And so, what makes me happy today might not be what makes me happy 2 years from now. Um, so I've clearly, um, I'm a reasonable person, like I'm a serious person. And so I think I'm going to work on the things that I need to work on. Like I started that way, and I'm very happy I did this because maybe it contributed to us being where we are today as a company. But clearly, I did a lot of things that I was not enjoying, and I think that by meeting with great coaches and other entrepreneurs, I've been able to know better how to focus on the things that you like the most, which is great because it's usually what you're best at. And so I feel like the way I work has evolved. But even if you ask me today, there are things I'm doing and might not be the things that I enjoy the most, but I know that it's a good investment of my time and I'm reasonable about it. Should I be? I don't know, but
Well,
I am.
there's a really good insight in there that I really like, that people change. And, the thing that is activating and gives you joy one year might not be the same thing 2 or 3 or 4 years after that. And I've
Yeah.
really noticed that for myself, where I used to love engineering and building product. And at a certain point, it wasn't new for me anymore. It wasn't that activating. I wasn't that interested in it. And so I found my interest had changed to uh, I love to meet people and connect with them. And I love to learn about new ideas and industries. And, it led me to be this, go down the career of being an investor and then now content creator, I guess. But, it was hard for me to like catch up with that, because I thought like I had this identity around like, oh, I should be a startup founder. And because that's what I had originally loved.
Yeah. And the good thing is when you realize that there is something that you used to do, that you used to like doing, and you don't like doing it anymore, like there are many people that would probably enjoy doing the thing that you don't like doing anymore. And so I think not being stuck with the thing that you used to love and making sure that you can recognize and first admit to yourself that you don't enjoy that as much as you used to, and acting on it is the first step to then just being more happy.
For sure. Okay. What's the kindest thing that anyone's ever done for you?
Oh, so hard. These questions are very hard.
This is a test. I don't know what the right answer is, but or just one kind. It doesn't have to be the
No,
absolute
no, no,
kind thing.
I'm thinking hard, as you can see. Um, Too hard. I don't know. I will say a few kind things that I feel like. So I feel like people do kind things to me all the time. So it's not like I'm trying to find an example. But very recently I gave birth to my daughter. The delivery was probably, in the bottom 1% of the worst thing that can happen. So not only it was extremely scary because her life was at risk, uh, but also I was suffering a lot. So combination of both, horrible. Um, and I just feel like everyone, and it was in the middle of COVID, so not a lot of people could help. So I feel like in this period of time, I've been surrounded with kindness, because between the people that could help and that literally would help me so that I could stay in my bed and recover while I had a newborn that was now living and that I had to take care of, to the people that could not be present but just sent things or helped me at work or like everything. Um, I will just remember this period that was a challenging time for me, which was September last year, as a period where I was surrounded with kindness, and I loved it. So I don't know if it's the most kind, but definitely an amazing thing that happened to me.
That's beautiful. I Yeah, when my son was born, I was very like touched by, like people complain about our medical system a lot, but like I feel like with kind of all the infrastructure around helping your new baby come into the world, we're like pretty good at that. you know?
For sure. How old is your
He
son now?
is almost 18 months. He'll be 18 months in, I don't know, he was born in September in 2019. So probably a year older.
Exactly a year after my daughter.
Yeah. So that's my last question actually, is how have you balanced, sort of thought about balancing, life as a parent with life as a startup founder?
So one thing I realized when I came back from maternity leave is I just wish that every founder had an opportunity to disconnect from work for a few months, just because I think it gives a lot of autonomy to your team and you learn way faster. And so I think my team. So I don't know if every CEO should do that, but go on a sabbatical, because yes, some things will break, but I think you will learn more than the amount of things that will break. So I came back and I realized that, where I thought I was indispensable, I was not. And it was a very good learning for me. I do feel like I have a good balance right now, because so how do I manage to do this is, like, again, extreme discipline. My daughter has a nanny until 4 p.m. And so at 4 p.m., I stop working. Look, it's 3:30. And then from 4 to 7 every day, I'm not working. And then during the weekend, I'm not working either. And what works for me might not work for another parent. Like, they might want more or less. But I feel like these hours I have with her, I'm fully present. I enjoy them, and it's been great. Again, like, my change in 1 year, I might tell you I want more or less time. I don't know. The balance doesn't work for me, but right now it works really well.
That's beautiful. I love that. So we usually wrap up with one of our Quest fellows from our Discord server being able to ask one or two questions, if you
Great.
don't mind. So we'll bring in Shannen, I think, who's up.
Hi, Mathilde. Thank you so much for having this talk. I am such a great fan of you and your company, so thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure hearing you speak with Justin. And, and so one of the questions that I had was, being a startup founder from Europe, do you see any improvement in the European venture capitalist ecosystem? Like, is Europe a better place now for startups than it was back in 2014 when you started Front?
Yes, it is. I think I can see it in a few different ways. I think maybe three. The first one is it's way easier to start a company just from an admin standpoint. Like, you have tools that make it easy, and it might seem like a small thing, but in the early days of a company, you should make sure that you're doing something people want, and you should not spend the vast majority of your time setting up every system in the world. So that's way easier. Number two is access to capital is better. Number three, which I think is the most significant, is mindset has changed. It wasn't very cool to join a startup when, like, in 2014. It definitely gets cooler. I think failing definitely also is cooler than it used to. So yeah, I've seen a ton of improvement with an office there now, and I can tell every year that it will make it easier for people to start companies.
That's awesome. And then another question that I had was, in your first year of running Front, you said that the better you do, the higher it gets due to the higher stakes, back a few years ago. So would you still say that this holds true 7 years later?
That it gets harder every year.
Pretty much, like, the better that the company does, the harder that it gets to manage it, the higher stakes and all of that.
I'd say that yes and no. So on one end, yes, more is at stakes. Like, literally, you have more employees, more investors, more customers, etc., more expectations. But I think maybe why it gets easier is two reasons. The first one is it's not a question of life or death anymore. And I mean, I can tell you that when I started Front and I had asked families from France to move here, like, I felt some pressure, because I was like, if the company fails and they've sold their houses and all of this and they need to go back to France, I would feel terrible. So I think this existential crisis doesn't cannot happen anymore. And number two is think you become more mature. I think being a CEO is such a hard job that for most people, you have to know yourself better and better while doing the job. Otherwise, you'll be so miserable. And I think because you become more mature and then you get to understand yourself better, then I think it becomes easier.
I see. Thank you so much. Those are some awesome answers. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Mathilde, thanks for jumping on this podcast. This is amazing to have you.
Well, thank you, Justin. And I hope I will talk to you soon.
Yes, absolutely. Talk to you soon.